Hello and welcome back to the Hack Attack. We're talking about faction action.
Yeah.
Looking for some faction action satisfaction. So, I could rhyme all day. So, in the previous segment, if you were here for that, you don't need me to tell you what it was. But if you weren't, if you're just joining us, we talked about integrating a system into a West Marches style game where you can track the ability of extra character factions, whether they're obvious ones like a church or a government, or less obvious ones like the servants of a dark power linked by some mystical curse. How you can track their movements within the greater section of the world, and how to port that from a game about spaceships and cyber ninjas into a game about witch boobs and leprosy.
Yeah.
Witch boobs and
The
leprosy.
two most important things in the West
That's
Marches.
right. Look, the thing is, you're creating. No, in the grand scheme of things, and I was thinking about this after your tweet today about creating lasting things. When it all boils away in the great heat death of the universe, people will remember Stephen
Witch
Lumpkin
boobs and
for
leprosy.
witch boobs and leprosy. That is your
absolutely.
legacy, my friend.
It's good. It means that I really touched something in some people.
Well, yep. Please show us on the character sheet where Stephen Lumpkin touched you. So, yeah. So what we want to do now is get into some more specific discussion about what kinds of things a faction might do in a given time. We should also talk about the time frame in which a faction would be doing those things.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, the reason why... God, I need to get it, I need to write it down on a piece of paper and have it, up on my wall, because I refer to this quote so often without ever knowing what the actual quote is. In the original AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, Gary Gygax specifically says, if you're not keeping track of exactly what day it is in your campaign, you are failing. Get the fuck out of my Dungeons and Dragons. Which I think is just, it's the most asinine thing to say.
Well, it's really interesting. It really, presents a clear vision for how he saw Dungeons and Dragons working.
Right, yes.
But
then, so many game designers give you no tools to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Because he's,
I mean, that's what all the income tracking that I do at the start of sessions is all about, right? It's that.
I mean, you watch me GM Stars Without Number, and every episode of Swan Song, I say, it's the 3rd of November, 3200.
Yep.
Or whatever, to reiterate, this is what time it is, this is where we are in the universe, time is moving forward.
Mm-hmm. We should talk about all of that, money expense stuff in a future hack attack.
I agree. Definitely.
Good. So yeah, let's talk about faction action.
So how long are your turns? How often do you do faction turns, right? Because your pacing in West Marches is very different than mine in Swan Song. In Swan Song, I can go 4 episodes without a month passing or an adventure passing, right? I just do them sporadically. Because the game says, by default, if a month calendar time has passed, or if they have finished an adventure, do a faction turn. Right?
Yeah.
Move the universe forward.
So the thing about the West Marches is that it's much more about travel and exploration than Swan Song is. Swan Song will go to a place and then either we'll spend a day there for 5 sessions, or we'll spend a month there in 1 session.
Yeah.
Whereas in the West Marches, there's a very much more methodical progression of time, because the thing that you do when you get to a destination is usually a matter of a couple of hours of work, and going to that destination to another destination is usually a matter of a couple of days. Generally, in the past, our episodes have taken 5 in-game days, and then there's been about 4 in-game days between episodes. So 2 episodes is about a month of time.
Yeah.
That's about the pace. It might be 3 episodes is about a month of time, but that's about the rate of time passing in the West Marches, and it's really pretty standard. I've got my spreadsheet of how many days have been passing, and during sessions and outside of sessions, and it's really pretty steady. It's a steady advancement.
So, I mean, would you say like how many episodes of West Marches does it take for a month to pass in game?
Let's see.
Just give me an average.
Let's see here. June was probably, it looked like 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
July was 6 weeks, and now we're just now in August. So I was off a little bit, but yeah,
So-
that's about how much time is going on.
So this would mean, I guess, you're doing a faction turn. You're advancing the world once every 5 sessions, let's say.
Right. If I were sticking with the 1 month
Yeah.
thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Pacing, I think, is very tricky because you're condensing things that were happening off screen in a way that you have to kind of like narrate through, and kind of like one attack roll. It's like combat in D&D. Like one attack roll doesn't represent a single swing of the sword. It represents the best possible opportunity out of a series of swings.
Yeah.
And so, you end up in this position where you're having to like blur that space a little bit, which I find is easy because all this stuff is happening very far away from the players, and because travel is like Age of Sail and not such a big deal. But, like, what does that look like for you? Like, do you have an instinctive idea of how often you want to advance the faction turns?
I mean, I feel like it should be more often than every 5 sessions or every
Sure.
6 sessions. I think that's probably a little bit too long. I also think that because the scale of the world is a little smaller, the scope of the faction assets is smaller, it doesn't make sense for it to be like, okay, this fleet of ships and that fleet of ships are sparring over the course of a month, and then, somewhere in that month, fleet B gets destroyed. I think it's
Sure.
more like, the Manticore attacks Bowick and destroys the bell tower in the process. So it's much more like a pretty concrete, this is a one-time occurrence that happened at a specific date.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it can be like, I think that if you're looking at a smaller scale of factions, this way the player's impact on the faction is going to be relatively higher too.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at it from actions of the player characters, imagine that the lizard men and the manticore are 2 faction assets belonging to whatever, some person in control of them or some group of control of them. So what happens, like the players just wiped out 2 of them wholesale. Like they're just gone, and that's a big hit to that faction, which is cool, but you also gotta I'm wondering, are you gonna end up with a single faction with like 5 smaller assets under it? Like, I have factions, mine tend to be kind of in the like 5, 10, 15 asset range, depending on the size.
Yeah. I think it would not make sense for factions to go up to the 15 asset size of things here in the West Marches.
You think so? Like even like a powerful one? I mean, I don't know anything about.
I mean, I think that's potentially kind of flexible.
Like all the servants of a particular dark deity, a particular deity, in the West Marches would be assets under that deity's sphere of influence, right?
Yeah.
So
like, there's kind of a weird thing, which is like right now, because I don't have factions and because I'm not thinking about this, like everything is kind of isolated.
Yeah.
Like the Manticore and the Lizardmen aren't related to a larger faction that they're assets of or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So they're kind of just entities living out in the world. So like, I think it depends on like the scope of the conflict that's happening in the world,
Sure,
and
yeah.
maybe even the general conflicts that are happening in the West Marches aren't entirely clear to me because I don't have the mechanics to support that sort of clarity.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily mind trying to move things to that sort of scope of 5, 10, 15 for like small, medium, large. Yeah, that's where my thoughts are.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think the thing here to remember is that, like, you can. I've taken a fairly loose approach to the way that I run the faction turn. Not so much that I'm like disregarding the rules or anything, but the way that the faction turn and the fiction of the game moment to moment interact tends to vary a little bit for me, in that sometimes stuff will show up in the faction because I bought it using faction credits, and other times it might just exist because I described it in the world. It's a bit like how character sheets in Apocalypse World are prescriptive and descriptive. Like, if it comes up that there happens to be a Blue Fever manufactory on Majid that I did not have in the faction turn before, but now belongs there, I could just throw that in and not worry about it, right? Like when I Cabral wasn't a faction for a really long time until I decided it was time to make them one, and when it was, I just added faction assets to planets that we never knew existed. They never knew we had them before, because I was like, it would make sense that they were there. They're just in the background, and I have that freedom because the scope of the game is big enough. So I feel like with a smaller scope, it might be a little trickier to do that, to like pull those things out.
Well, so like the like a single region in the West Marches takes about a day to walk across. Yeah. And you could conceptualize each region of the West Marches as a planet. Yeah. That sort of idea. So like in the Central Ellen Plain, the primary town is Virascali, but there are other towns as well. And there's definitely stuff in the Central Ellen Plain that we haven't discovered yet in game, because you can walk 6 miles in any direction, and that's what, 2 hours of walking or something like that?
Well, that's a big deal. Like let's take a look right now at just like how factions move assets around, because there's no move action in the list, right?
Right.
You have to have a faction who's either you're a mercenary faction, so by default you get to move your shit around because you want to, or you're using factions like ships, caravans, boats, whatever that can move these things around. So, travel time is relevant. Like if you're doing turns, like GM turns every 2 weeks, and a Manticore can't get 8 miles in 2 weeks,
right?
Like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Yeah,
exactly.
So I think that you're going to end up having a lot of like teleporting assets or whatever. But again, that just starts with a number, right? Like there's a move action in Silent Legions because again the scope is smaller, so we'll have to kind of take a look at how that works.
Exactly.
But what I think we want to do is scale is a thing that will get nudged around, right? Because you'll do a turn once and be like, wait a second, there's no way that this would work this way.
Yep.
Games need to be played to know whether they're doing their job. So let's talk about the actions that a faction can take. So I would argue the most used action, not necessarily the most important, but the most used is the attack action, which I described before. I pick an asset, I attack a faction that's in the same hex as me, so you have to be there. Now, maybe you have magic assets that can attack from a distance. Maybe that's a thing, right? Increasing range, that kind of thing.
Right.
So you choose an asset, you attack with it. The defender has to choose whether they want to defend with an asset or not defend and just get hit, in which case the damage is done to their faction hit points, their general cohesion as a faction.
Now, hang on, I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
Can you only attack something that's in the same hex as the faction, or as in the same hex as the asset?
So the factions don't exist in hexes. You can have influence over certain things, but there's a special kind of asset called a base of operations or a base of influence. I can never remember because you create them once and then ignore them forever. Base of influence. So a base of influence means I have a building or a thing, like an actual attackable thing here. This might mean like if the Flensworm built a temple in Virascali. That's a base of influence in an area that's controlled by an enemy faction, maybe. Right? So you have to attack someone who has an asset there, and if they choose not to defend, then the damage goes right to their faction. Or if the only thing they have to defend with is a base of influence, then they defend with that, and the base gets hit. And if bases get hit, the damage done to the base is also done to the faction. Nice. So killing the Flensworm's worshippers doesn't hurt the Flensworm's cohesion, but attacking the temple would.
Right.
Because it's considered a base of influence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's a thing that you can do. So they attack. You pick a target. You attack. They choose to defend. You roll. If you beat them, it's a D10 plus your relevant stat. If the attacker wins, they deal the damage of their asset, or in some cases do the special effect. So sometimes, like instead of damaging, in lieu of damage, you steal money. So like raiders or bandits or whatever, or you like cause a debility to them or something. Make it like they get disadvantage on all cunning rolls for the next 2 faction turns or something. So there's that you could do. their effect takes place. Now, if they miss, if I attack and you defend and I miss, if you have a counter attack, then you can roll that damage against me. And as the Photontower Society has learned on Oninsa Libre territory, counterattack can be a bad deal. If you attack and you miss, it's like, okay, cool, now you're just getting free shots on me.
You're a sitting duck.
It's to represent the sort of back and forth of combat, in that it's not, I am making an attack roll, you are making an attack roll.
Yeah.
Saves you from having to track AC and that kind of stuff. And so that's the attack action, right? It's like, it's how you defeat your enemies by whittling down their assets, or how you defeat specific assets. And this stuff is really cool in play because we might be gearing up to go fight, you know, the zombie dragon of the marshes, but if you know, there's a crusader order that's wandered into town and they're like, we're gonna go kill this guy on the faction turn, we're all geared up, we're like, let's go, and you get there and he's dead already. It's like, cool. We get there and there's a bunch of asshole crusaders standing around. We would have to decide, now maybe we fight the crusaders for that treasure instead. And that comes from a place of fiction being given teeth by mechanics, right? It matters because it's something that happened in play. So,
and that would also be like, I mean, that would be a dramatic thing to discover in a game like the West Marches. Like, the big bad that we were marching out to go kill is already dead.
Yeah.
And we had seen evidence of its living recently. We'd seen it acting on the world around us.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, like, what in Stars Without Number and Swan Song, if y'all go to Cabral, and I've been doing faction turn stuff on Cabral, it might not be the way you expect it to be when you get there, right? And a different group might have taken power, different assets might be in play, that kind of thing. So, you know, it's a big deal, and it's a good way to make the world feel alive, which, as we've said about a million times, is the point of the faction turn. So attack, an obvious one. Buy assets. This is easy. Use money. Get new stuff. Place it in an area you have a base of influence. So you can't just spawn assets in enemy territory.
Yeah.
Change your homeworld. So this is just like picking up your base and going somewhere else.
That would be kind of like changing your region instead of changing your hex. It'd be like, you know, you move all of your stuff a day or so away or something like that. Yeah,
and it's like, it's about moving, you're not even necessarily moving the assets, but it's like changing the capital from Tokyo to Kyoto or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, or Edo to Tokyo. Like, we're just like, this is not the capital anymore. We're going to move the government over here. Now, we still have all of our armies in this other city, but it's not as important to us politically as this other place. And that affects, you know, how you attack and in what way, you know, that impacts things.
Yeah.
So, you know, moving your home world in this case, expanding your influence is a special form of buying where you create a new base of influence, and then everybody who has a base or assets already get free shots on it.
Nice.
So this would be like, hey everyone, we're here to build a new church to the Flensworm. He's so great. And then now the politicians get to be like, boo, get out, worm. And the crusaders get to be like, we're going to burn you. But if those don't kill you outright, you're like, yay, the church is still here. Hooray, Flensworm.
Excuse me, have you heard about the Flensworm?
Hey, if you heard about the Flensworm, he's the best.
Yeah.
So you expand your influence, but it's dangerous, right? You have to like knock away at your enemies first so they can't attack you, or just spend a ton of money and be like, whatever, I'm going to build something that's like 40 hit points and it's going to get knocked down to 10, but I'll still be around.
Right.
It's a big investment.
If influence is one of our core stats, like what else could we call this? Expand, foothold, or
I mean, you could even mark it down. Like, this doesn't have to be called expand influence. It could be called buy base of influence, right?
Yeah.
So this could just be like create stronghold or whatever.
Yeah.
Getting up in the world.
Refitting assets and repairing assets. Repairing is like building their HP back up, right?
Yeah. Repairing the asset or the faction, and this is how you keep yourself from getting killed.
Right.
Refitting assets, I always forget that it exists, but it's super useful, and it like turned the tide of an entire civil war in Swansong because we turned some crappy militia guys into post-tech or pre-tech infantry, and they were like, oh, we found a cache of crazy TL5 weapons. Now we are going to win at war. So suddenly they had a bunch of stuff. And this is a way that you can install assets on a planet with permission or whatever, and then make upgrades to them, and continue to like expand on them. It doesn't allow you to like sneak in the back door and like turn, an asset that you still have to get permission if you have that government tag. But depending on how the governments work and if there is one, then it doesn't really matter. You can change the assets around.
So this is like upgrade.
Totally, it's just upgrade, yeah.
Upgrade asset, repair faction.
I mean, if we want to be terminologically correct, I would call these like
heal.
Heal asset, because fantasy.
Yep. Heal asset, heal faction, sell asset. Now selling isn't like
it's like selling
does that tie into fac creds, or does it tie into wealth?
Yeah, so in Stars Without Number, it ties into fac creds, like you get half the credits back. Okay. But it isn't really sell asset to person. It's sell for scrap, because no one gets it, right? You don't give it to another. You don't give it to another faction. You just take it apart and get money for it.
You reduce it to its components, and then you use those components elsewhere. So this is like, God, like what would it be like if you sold a manticore? It'd be like, you slay it, you get the poison glands from its tail, and then you use those as a wealth resource. Part
of the challenge of these turns is justifying the mechanics in a form of fiction. Like you could very easily make a West Marches Gazetteer, and that every month or whatever it comes out, and you're like, hear ye, in yon West Marches this year, and it like just talks about stuff that people would know about, and it could be like, an alchemist shop has opened in such and such because the faction bought a thing.
That was actually always supposed to be something that was supposed to happen, in that there were supposed to be outriders in Virascali who would go on scouting trips out into the wilds and come back with reports and say like, yeah, there's something strange going on in the woods. There's some more living shrubs than usual, and a shipment is gone.
Well, you integrate this as a GM, and this is true of the system that we're creating, and in the system that already exists. You integrate this stuff into the fiction by placing it in the background. Like anyone who watches both the faction turn and Swan Song can see me be like, you see a TV and this is happening on the TV, or you overhear some people gossiping about this, or there's more blue fever in the world because the syndicate has been going ham on making fact creds and selling drugs, right? So it affects the world in that way. So it doesn't always have to be like specifically this, but you could be like, you're in a tavern and you hear people talking about this, and then that could lead to specific player action.
Cool. So dismantle asset.
Yeah, or whatever you want to call it. And then it'd be up to you to be like, okay, in this case, dismantling the Manticore means that it's more valuable as parts to the faction. So they make Manticore armor for their like dragon champion or whatever.
Yeah.
Seize
Planet.
Yeah, Seize Planet is just a way to get the planetary government tag. So this would be like, I don't know, become authority, or like seize control.
Yeah, seize power.
Yeah, seize power.
And use asset ability. That makes sense. That would be the same sort of thing.
It's like attack, but it allows you to activate the special abilities of your assets.
Yep. Cool.
Cool indeed. So those don't feel like they need to change, too hard from here. Like,
nope.
They're all pretty straightforward. There's actually a good point in chat that the like disassemble one might be sacrifice asset.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the sound of that. That's kind of cool.
I like that. Yeah. Like, there's a weird terminology thing. Like, are you sacrificing it against an enemy? But
yeah,
no.
This is like stab, blood, power. Yay.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, goals, of course, we would define those based on knowing what kind of things we have and what we can do with them. So now we know what we can do with the things we have. So now let's talk about security personnel and beach headlanders and totally. Psychic assassins and gravitech formations.
All Grigori wants in the West Marches is his very own drop pod. Can I have one of those?
Yeah.
So the start of the next adventure, I just come flying in from space.
We've got muscle, weird, and influence, right?
I'll jump back over to my Chrome window so folks can see how this stuff works. So assets in the game, just to kind of quickly review, they have a name and abilities. They have hit points. They have a cost in faction credits. They have a baseline tech level required to purchase them. So this is a thing that we can talk about. Maybe there's a space where, maybe not. They have a type, they have an attack, they have a counterattack, and they have special, which is, I think, dependent on a bunch of factors. But for right now, like let's look at an example. So harvesters, they're a really simple one. This would be in the West Marches like a farm or something. And harvesters allow you to gather natural resources, whether ore, biologicals, or other unprocessed natural goods. As an action, the harvester's owning faction can roll a d6. On a 4+, one additional fact cred is gained. So you can't attack with harvesters. They have no attack stat. So what you would do is you would use the special ability, and they would become active. You roll a d4, and you get credits, or whatever. You roll a d6, you get credits.
Nice.
Yeah, they're really useful for factions that are entrenched or established. So that's a thing. And then cost is just how much they cost. That's pretty straightforward. Tech level, now, I don't know. Tech level is a very sci-fi thing, so we wouldn't want to be like... I mean, you could fantasize this by changing it to, like, age, and be like stone, bronze, iron, steel... whatever, info.
I think there might be like a better sort of corollary in a game like the West Marches, which is either sort of like a weirdness level or like a magic power level.
Well, so this is the thing though. Like, keep in mind that the assets are clustered. So these are wealth assets. Mm-hmm. These are cunning assets, and these are force assets, and you can only have a number of assets equal to the stat. So if your weird is 1, you get one weird thing in your little army of stuff. Mm-hmm. If you have a ton of influence and very little military, you're going to have politicians and spies and crap, but you probably won't have a wizard and a knight in your employ. So tech level has to apply, whatever we replace it with, if anything, has to apply across the board.
Chad is throwing out some interesting ideas about like civilization level or some sort of like civilization wild spectrum or something like that. I like the direction that's going, but I don't necessarily think that it's the perfect corollary.
Think about what it restricts, right? Like, okay, let's say I am some barbaric dark god. Let's just hypothetically say that because it's not true. If I want to make a unit of cavalry, of mounted armored cavalry with lances, do I first need to control a town with the resources to do that? To like have, or can I just fucking conjure these dark god knights from nothing and send them to do my bidding, right? Like,
you know what? Scratch and Sniff said it in chat, and I think it's right, actually. Ascendency might be the right sort of thing. It's like, what level of ascendancy is your faction leader, maybe? Like your faction, I don't know, like there's a weird thing where it's like,
well, here's the
faction is ascending.
Here's the question: Are we basing it on a stat in the same way that in Dungeon World, to get certain advanced moves you have to be level 6 or higher? Are we saying that? Because again, this is already scaled, right? Like, to be able to purchase a scavenger fleet, you have to have wealth 8. Right. So do we want to add another vector on that matrix to say, not only do you have to have influence 5, but you also must have ascendancy 3, right? All it's going to do is make the accumulation of those assets slower.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I'd have to really think about what like the two axes there are supposed to be doing for us. Because if it's just a straight sort of like, what is it? Like, I see what the tech level is referring to. So, like, a wealth 6 commodities broker is a tech level 0 thing. So it could be something where it's like, you can buy, like, a muscle 6. Like, what would that be? That would be, like, some sort of, like, a curse that protects the borders of your fortress or something like that. And that would require an ascendancy level 2 because it's not...
Sure.
It's not particularly really, really weird, but then there might be like another thing that is like when you lift your castle into the sky and it becomes a sky keep.
So the thing to remember about tech levels in this and how I want to make an analog to them is that they're restricted based on location. So if you don't control a TL5 planet, you can't make TL5 assets. So location is important. So this is where we can kind of get into the like ley line, places of power kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like how much arcane might a location has. Like Virscali might be built on a sacred site, or it might not, right? It might just have a mine there, and that's why people built there.
Yep.
So that's an option, right? Like you have to control an area of a certain, I don't know, countenance. It has to have a certain level of magical oomph in the world. And then also there are assets that allow you to bypass or ignore this. So if you own an asset that's like a Chaos Sorcerer, wherever the Chaos Sorcerer goes counts as Ascendency +1 because he's such a wicked badass, right?
Yep.
So it's a mechanic for us to play with in that way. I like the idea of... God, there's a word for it, but I can't remember what it is, but like essentially like ontological weight. Like how much do you matter in the cosmology of the world? Like a peasant faction, like the Peasant Uprising, might have a ton of like manpower and a bit of wealth and stuff, and they might even have some hedge wizards and witches to like work for them, but they're je ne sais quoi. They're like a magic power. Their relevance in the world, it's very low. It might be a 0 or whatever. They're TL0 in that effect.
They're I mean, it's like their cosmic impact, their cosmology, or their...
Are you a big deal, or are you bullshit? And in what way on that scale do you fall? Yeah.
Or like insight from Bloodborne, where like the higher your insight is, the closer to seeing things the way they actually are. You are like, yeah, I see where you're going with it. Okay, I'm gonna just like type ascendency.
Yeah, or like fate or destiny or whatever. Like something that how big of a deal are you? Like, you know, Hercules, very high. Random Greek soldier, very low.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Good. Okay, so type indicates a couple of things about them. This is how we determine broad scale stuff and how it affects other stuff. And like facilities, special forces, starships, military units, tactics, and that kind of thing. So it's a way to determine physically what it is, right? Like a harvester is a facility, it's buildings.
Yeah.
But lawyers are a unit of people. Yep. And one way that this affects it is special forces get moved around, military units get moved around, starships do the moving, facilities do not move. You build harvesters, that's where they live.
I think like type might be a good place to put like the distinction between like a single powerful monstrous creature and
this
like
would be
a group of dudes or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be like goblins, they're a horde. I mean, okay, again, and because you're already familiar with it, look at Dungeon World and how it organizes threats and dangers and stuff, right?
Yeah.
It would be like a lich is probably like a single like creature or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
A power mad wizard or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then attack and counterattack, these are all pretty straightforward. Is the thing capable of being aggressive? If so, what is its vector and how is it defended against? Right? Like local investments, you attack with wealth and your enemy defends with their wealth. You want to use your local investments to hurt enemies who have low wealth because you're likely to win in that way. Knights are things that would be like force versus force. But if you rallied your farmers, it might be like wealth versus force, because the wealthier you are, the more farmers you might have. However, your enemy is still capable of defending with soldiers and arrows, and poor peasants get stabbed to death.
Yep. Good. And then special is what?
Special?
ASP?
ASP. Special, I can never remember because it doesn't come up that much. I will see if I can find it here. Oh, it's just notes. It indicates the asset has a special action it can perform. S means it has a special feature or cost. So this is all tied in. Just to remind you, like harvesters have an action, which is get more money. Base of influence is special. Local investments require certain payments. It's just an indicator of, hey GM, look over here for a different rule.
Here's something you need to do.
Yeah, it's a flag to let you know that kind of thing. So you want to just like talk about some theoretical like assets?
Possible assets.
Possible assets. So what did we determine was maybe our 3 categories? It was like force or
muscle, weird, and influence, or let's call it might.
Yeah, might is cooler.
Yep, might.
Conan didn't have muscles. He had mighty thews.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, a thews would be good. Thews, weird. And
you got really strong. What are thews anyway? It's like your leg?
It's your muscles.
It's just your muscles. Okay.
Yeah. Right. It could actually be like thews, brain, and charisma, or something like that. Strength, Strength, intelligence, and charisma.
Strength, dex.
If we wanted to go really D&D with it. Anyway, yeah, might is a good one. So like, let's start there. Too. I mean,
it's probably the most obvious one too.
If you have something like security personnel, that would, I mean, let's just say militia unit is just straight up militia unit.
So this is a place where if we were putting in a lot of effort, and if we were like really tied to like, we want to make this work for D&D, we would create a repeatable system for converting monsters from the monster manual into assets.
Yes.
Wholesale, to be like, if a monster has X amount of hit points, give it this stat, and if it has this many damage dice, give it this much faction damage.
Yep. I mean, you'd probably do that on like a range of CRs.
Yeah.
Where it's like any monster in the range of like 0 to 2 turns into a faction asset that's like this.
I mean, I would argue any monster 0 to 2 doesn't get to be a faction asset. Like,
true.
Like, yeah, the town of Virascali has bought its own faction asset, a single badger.
Yes.
Go, Byron. Go out into the wild. Fight our enemies.
You might be like, okay, any grouping of creatures that forms a CR3 encounter, for example.
Yeah.
Or adds up to its XP being, 450.
Well, and this is where we end up with type and stuff. And like, let's look at some general stuff first, and then, like I said, if we were the kind of people that wanted to continue to do this, we might be able to, but I think it's better to ad hoc it right now, because that's a lot of... Building a conversion table can be a lot of work, and I'm not really...
Yep.
I don't give a shit, so let's not do that.
So like a low level... So here's an interesting thought. I feel like a low level might asset could be like a knight.
Yeah, like a single knight. Okay.
You have a single knight. He's CR3. He probably has a horse. He might have like a +1 sword or something like that. Or maybe that's another might asset that you would buy. Or a weird asset.
Let's look at what the force assets are. So these are all more or less kind of equal in the eyes of Stars Without Number, right? For different reasons. But there's security personnel. There's hitmen.
Yeah.
And there are a militia unit.
Yeah.
So you could easily just keep those three. Yeah. I mean, I would change hitmen, because fantasy doesn't have hitmen. It has assassins, and assassins tend to be higher up. They're like, this would be like... Well,
hitmen would be skirmishers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's elite skirmishers later, but yeah, hitmen could be like thugs, basically. A militia unit stays without too much trouble. Security personnel might just be guards, right? Yep. Guardsmen or whatever.
I mean, like... I wonder if the militia unit is actually guardsmen. Maybe the security personnel is... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
well, militia is just armed peasants, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, if your village doesn't have any dedicated soldiers, you can hide a rusty sword under your bed, and if everyone in the village does that and the orcs come calling, at least then you'll have that going for you.
So yeah, guardsmen, thugs, and a militia.
Yeah.
And a militia unit might be like 8 dudes. Or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, security personnel are almost literally town guards, right?
Yep.
Standard civilian guards or policemen equipped with non-lethal weapon or personal sidearms. You would not necessarily use they're sort of defensive. You wouldn't use them to attack your enemies. So now these force assets are built very much with the establishment in mind, right? We're not looking at and again, Halfwing, because he's the most experienced of the Silent Legion's GMs that I know. He's 100% of them, but he was just saying in chat that like Muscle 1 and Silent Legions are corrupt cop, cult thugs, fortified lair, and hitman.
Yeah.
So again,
and that's really close, right?
Again, a lot of these you can take plural ones, and to reduce the scope, just change them from hitmen to hitman.
Here's an interesting thing. I wonder if maybe these things should, instead of being guardsmen, it's more like a tag that we apply to a creature that exists. So it's like the lizard men, like maybe they had a militia, like that was kind of what you guys fought, was the lizard man militia, but then they could have purchased...
Well, I mean, that's my question.
Lizard men guards.
I see where you're going with this. So like those lizard men might have been one asset, like lizard man tribe, right? And I would almost call that, like, I would make an asset, probably under might, that's just like, I don't even know how to, like, it's not just goblins, but it would be any like any tribe of low-level crappy monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like a gang of goblins or a bunch of lizard men, and it makes up all of them. Like, you don't have to split lizard men into security lizards and farming lizards and
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
You just have a clutch of lizard men, and it makes up their whole civilization, and then I kill them all.
I mean, you could be like horde, any horde.
Right, yeah. Small horde, war
Yeah.
horde, right, and build them up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because in this, we talked about upgrades, right? You could even call that like level up asset. And you start with a small horde, you move up to like a battle horde, and then you eventually move up to the bigger horde, and the bigger horde is supported by, a war chief and some catapults and whatever.
Yeah, so guards, thugs, and militiamen.
Sure.
Militiamen.
And again, we don't have to determine like all of these now. Like I think you want to add to them.
We'll go through like a
move them
couple of
around.
random ideas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Does base of influence make sense?
Well, so base of influence is special because it belongs in all three. Because it's not actually of a type. Like when you buy a base of influence, it has no type.
Mm-hmm.
It just exists with hit points.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you'd have stronghold. Cool. Is there anything else that's obviously something we could just take over and be like, this makes sense over here? Like, let's look at the higher level force assets, like blockade fleet. What?
Well, it's all going to be scale, right? Like, yeah, when you get up to the high level stuff, what is the West March's equivalent of Space Marines, right?
I mean, that would probably be like some sort of like Crusader Knight or something like that.
And I guess the other issue is that like if all the factions are even and stuff, the players are going to hear about the time when the Crusader Knights and the other thing clash. Like it's going to be a big deal. And
Right.
if those Crusaders come looking for trouble, it's going to be very hard for any other asset to sort of defend themselves.
Yeah. So like Knights might be a Space Marine sort of thing, because like you could have, I mean, like the Serpents of Woe might have quote unquote knights that look really different from what the classic interpretation of knights are.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about
The Flensworm has knights, but it's like weird cultists with flayed skin. And
like you look at the way that Warhammer Fantasy does this, in that like a dark elf riding a chimera or something is approximately equivalent to a human knight riding a griffin. Or whatever. And they're all kind of the same unit, but they feel very different. The flavor is there.
So let's see, Deep Strike Landers might be something like a teleportation spell.
Yeah, and I mean that would be different. That would be like, I would say, like if you look at Deep Strike Landers are a facility, so if you wanted to emulate it directly, it might be like like magical ring that allows you to teleport, like a location they could teleport from and to.
Yeah,
right.
Some sort of waypoint or something. Waypoint. I'll just put that there.
So one thing that I wanted to talk about too is that like the difference in Stars Without Number between a Force 8 asset and a Force 1 asset is like so big, right?
Yep, it's massive.
Like a force of, but I don't see that in West Marches, right? Like, what for you? Like, let's imagine that you have a faction. Let's use like a town because they're easy to, like a medieval town.
Yeah.
What is your Force 1 is some armed peasants.
Yeah.
What would be the farthest opposite end of the scale? What would a muscle or a might 8 asset be? Right? Like, what's the biggest, baddest shit they could have? Like, former adventurer? Like...
Yeah, kind of, basically,
like
yeah.
20th level superhero, basically.
I mean, it would be something like... like Crusader Knights are high on that list. That's like Force 7. So like, what's the next one step up? I mean, it might be like
I like
Crusader Knights with magical equipment or something.
I just like the idea of a really high in each one, like might, weird, or influence. Just having like former adventurer or like hero or superhero or whatever, because it's like it's just like that gives us something to aspire to, right?
Well, like maybe like the Force 8 is an ascendant. Sort of dude, right?
And like honestly, like we've talked about retirement before, right? Mm-hmm. And so like for me, if I got to a point where I was like, kind of getting tired of playing Dr. Grigori, that'll never happen. But let's imagine that I'm a boring loser and I get to that point and I'm like, you know what, I want to play a new character. I'd like to retire Dr. Grigori and we could make him become an asset of a faction that I've been working on, right? I could be like, cool, the Cult of the Old Gods now has a weird 8 asset. Cool, I'm out.
Yep. So, like, you know, the Might asset, I'm calling it Ascendant Champion.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So that's like, God, who in popular stories would we call that?
Fucking Gandalf, Elminster, Drizzt, like...
I'm trying to think of like a knightly, like Uther or Arthas, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Pre going bananas, Arthas.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. And yeah, might would be totally like a paladin or a fighter or like someone who is or a ranger who has like become crazy powerful.
Interestingly enough, you know, I think the statute of spoilers is off on this one too, but Kellen's father is probably like an ascendant champion of some sort of distant region.
I want to point out something weird that's happening to us right now. Like we're making original D&D backwards. Because original D&D was taking large-scale conflict and boiling it down, and now we're like, how can we expand Dungeons & Dragons out to
large-scale conflict?
We're like literally inverting the process, which is weird and kind of fucked up and awesome.
That's fun.
Cool. So I think that like might is pretty easy, and that we can fill in this stuff in the middle pretty easily with military units and special forces. But what kinds of like facilities or tactics might they have?
I think a facility would be like weapons manufacturing or like industry, those sorts of things. So like, let's see, I'm just gonna like jot these down in completely improper places, but weapons, arms manufacturing.
Oh yeah, weapon and armor smith, like a powerful smithy. Yeah.
And what were you saying? Like facilities versus.
Well, so like tactics is another example.
Tactics.
So tactics, there aren't that many in the game.
That would be like a siege, right?
The only force tactic that exists in Stars of the Number is Cunning Trap.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, like, Cunning Trap, I wonder. Like, that could definitely be one, I guess. And then, like, siege makes a lot of sense to me. Cunning Trap.
Yeah, Cunning Trap is designed so that, like, you... Siege would be an interesting one, because this is not so much creating a siege situation, but, like, some kind of, like, siege defense or something where you, like...
Yeah, it's like, literally you have camped outside of this people. Or
well, in this case,
reinforced walls.
Yeah, or like, because we're on such a small scale, these can be upgrades not to a whole civilization, but upgrades to a locational space too.
Yep.
So you can look at like the kinds of shit that a castle might have.
So
yeah, I like that. That's cool.
So we've got facilities, tactics, facilities, tactics, and what's the other category? It's like manpower?
Military unit, special forces, facilities, tactics, starships.
Military units, facilities, tactics, special forces. And then starships is an interesting one because, like, what does that mean?
Starships tend to be, the tag in this tends to be explanatory of its ability to move around really fast.
Yeah.
So there might not be an analog, right? It might just be another special force. And again, I wouldn't call them special forces necessarily because that's very much like a modern feeling term, but...
Yeah. Elites.
All that starships do in this is move around lots and are also capable of dealing damage and getting in combat.
Yeah. I mean, like, your starships might be some sort of, like, high-level wizard, cleric, magic users, right?
Well, let's talk about, while we still have time, the other two kinds of assets.
Yep.
So, like, for weird, this, I think, is where you start inserting all of the, like, monsters in the setting. And normal, like, normative type factions will probably have a very low weird score, if any, right? Like, by default, every asset or every faction in Stars of Number is a little bit wealthy, a little bit cunning, and a little bit forceful, right? You'll always have a 1, but I can imagine factions in West Marches just not having
a 0 weird.
Yeah. And maybe it's a point buy thing instead of like a straight up this number like it is in Stars. But
yeah,
I mean this is like pretty basic stuff, right? Like this is where you add in things like undead
curses.
Yeah, curse is a tactic for sure.
So hang on, tell me what the categories are in Stars Without Number for like the types of assets that we have. Are they still facilities, military units,
all
tactics?
facility, special forces, military unit, tactics. Yeah, that's the same stuff.
Facilities, special forces, military units.
That's right.
Tactics, and starships.
Yeah, and I think weird is a space, and just like in Silent Legions, where you have a lot more room to do non-material stuff like Miasma of Doom, or Minor Curse, Protective Right, things that influence your faction or enemy factions ethereally. Summoning circles that make it cheaper to buy assets. Necro Fortress that allows you to like summon undead more quickly or more easily. And then also
special forces would be like monster
zombies, skeletons, demons. This is where like a weird 8 might be Demon Prince, and weird 1 might be Skeletor, right? Like little barrage. Like maybe you have a necromancer who summoned these things, then he left. He's not just hanging around.
Someone in chat is talking about how Hextia might be an example of a Force 8 weird asset or something like that.
Yeah.
That's definitely in the right line of things for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
The types are kind of weird because I'm thinking about okay, you've got like an undead faction or something like that. Like, what does the Force 8 weird undead thing look like versus what does the Force 8 might undead thing look like? And are they different?
Well, I mean, it's flavor, right? Like, if you have let's say a Force 8 asset or a Might 8 asset that's to you in your mind represents a giant golem behemoth made out of bone and gristle, like summoned from a abattoir pit, right? It doesn't have to be different mechanically because again this is coming from an OSR game where the flavor is almost all at the GM level,
right?
So that asset can mechanically be the same as a shining paladin with a Holy Avenger. They're on par mechanically, and you just flavor them however you want.
Yeah, but finding the word to describe what that is when there's two completely opposite things. So when a knight is the same thing as an undead lord, what word do you use to describe that Might 8 asset?
Yeah.
And Ascendant Champion, I think, is the right thing. So you can have a paladin or an undead lord as your Ascendant Champion.
Well, and again, dude, you can add Ascendant Champion to level 8 of all 3 of them and be your Might Champion attacks Might versus Might, your Weird Champion attacks Weird versus Weird, and your Influence Champion does Influence versus Influence, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right? You can have the same asset in each one, but just have them have different attack vectors or different damage or however you want to handle that.
Yeah. Cool. So those are some ideas for weird assets.
Yeah.
And then influence assets. So once again, we've got military unit.
Yep. And as you can imagine, the influence, or in this one, cunning, it's kind of you see the shift. There's more tactics and special forces in cunning than there are in force. So these are things like stealth, which we talked about, like buying stealth for an asset, lobbyists, blackmail, false fronts, informers, smugglers. These are where a rogue would fit in if they wanted to retire, but also so would a bard. So influential politician or local agitator, or politics tends to get tied up in religion in a medieval setting, because that's how our history, Western history, has always sort of been, right? The Catholic Church and stuff that get involved, and it's that's where all that stuff occurs. But you can make it commercial as well. So having the ability to like learn things about people by way of like a brothel or something, where you can attack another asset and like learn where their stealth assets are.
Yeah. Could you do something like a tactic as resource control, where it's like, okay, this faction has purchased the influence asset of controlling all of the ironwood in this region?
Yeah, but you would have to find a way to make it mechanical so that an attack or a special activity by that asset impacts the other assets. Like, you could also do like embargo or trade route control, where if you successfully attack an asset, or if you successfully attack a faction, they can't use money in the next turn, but they can't spend the money they have.
Facilities for an influence asset.
Colleges.
What would that look like? Yeah, colleges or
any salons, place where people go to talk and like thought emerges, right? Political influence stuff, like places like that. But again, there's not a lot of like for this one, for cunning, there's like covert transit net, logistics facility. Halfling was saying that economic domination is a thing in Silent Legions. So just like what we were talking about.
Cool.
Yeah, so all really useful stuff there. And this one I think would be like, for me, it's really interesting to see how influence assets would work, because can you defeat weird or might with influence? Like, is there a faction that would be able to be like, we are influential enough to like overpower the fact that you've got a wizard, right? Like,
I think that's absolutely a thing that would work in the West Marches.
Can we embargo your wizard into irrelevance?
Well, like, I think influence isn't necessarily, like, embargo might not be the right thing, but, like, influence in general is maybe, like, the force of your belief system.
Yeah.
And if you bring that to bear against the enemy's wizard, then absolutely it's a thing that can impact his effectiveness.
Yeah, definitely.
So, like, embargo or, like, the economic influence sort of aspects maybe is the wrong angle to look at influence in the West Marches specifically, but like bards, rogues, local agitators, yeah.
I
mean, like, you know, if you send local agitators to a location and they deliver a big strike against the wizard, maybe the impact is really that like they've riled up that town to like make life really hard for the wizard for a while, so he just doesn't get to do the shit he actually wanted to do because he's busy dealing with a town that thinks magic is evil and is trying to burn him out.
Totally. Yeah. And this is just political or religious influence to guide people's behavior in a certain way, and then just have the force of social power against them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Good. Well, like, we have a lot of really strong potential options for like what might weird and influence assets could be like. And I think now it's just a matter of me sitting down for a number of hours and like hashing these out and thinking about like concrete applications for what they actually turn into in game and how they all start to relate to each other under the umbrella that's the faction.
Yeah, so one way you could do that is by looking at the factions that you already have in your head and being like, what assets do these have? I'm going to need to mechanize those and see where the crossover is. And then I would do it. I would design from what you have out rather than design a system and try to make what you already have fit it. Because ultimately, like, it's a homebrew designed for use in a particular campaign. True. And using real examples of stuff will always be easier than trying to make up whole cloth stuff that you just want to include.
Yeah. Like, the challenge with that, of course, is that generally everything in the West Marches right now is more like an asset and less like a faction.
Yeah.
And so, like, and they're all kind of isolated. Like, Hextia is potentially, a powerful asset for some kind of a faction, but there isn't a faction that exists that covers the Hextia asset under its umbrella.
This is exactly the same situation that I have in Swansong, in that the Warmind isn't big enough to be a faction, but doesn't belong to any faction either. So guess what? Not in the faction turn, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's easy. You just don't include them. You keep them on the back burner, and eventually either they become a faction after enough time, or you co-opt them into another faction.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Chat's asking me to stream that, and I probably will.
Cool.
But it probably won't happen before the next West Marches on Saturday.
Yeah, given that is tomorrow.
I don't think I have time for that.
Yeah.
between
So
that.
yeah, I'm excited for you to put together some faction assets so that I can go and kill them.
Yep, exactly. And that's, I mean, like, that's the whole idea behind the West Marches anyway, is that, like, it's supposed to be a world that the players feel motivated to choose their own adventure out in.
Yeah.
Which having faction stuff moving around out there will make that a lot easier and more obvious to people, I think.
Cool. Well, I think this is a really good start. And
Yep.
yeah, we can put some stuff together and do a little brainstorming, and then I think maybe for like the next episode or in a future episode, we should just do like a test turn.
Yeah.
And kind of look at how that works.
Totally.
Cool.
All right. Well, Adam,
Should we?
thanks for hosting the Hack Attack. Is it
Of
shoutouts
course.
time?
I think so. I think we can.
All right.
If by some dark miracle people don't already know who we are, tell them, Stephen. Who art thou?
I'm Stephen Lumpkin. I'm at Silent0siris on Twitter and YouTube and Twitch and not Facebook. Anyway, like, I'm a game master who runs a bunch of games, including one called The West Marches over on twitch.tv/itmejp. And The West Marches is currently using the D&D 5th edition rule set, but because it's a sandbox hex crawl game, the 5th edition rule set doesn't really support the kind of experience I'm going for. So Adam and I have decided to start talking about what kind of rules we can add on or take away or change to help 5th edition play better for what we want it to do. And that's me.
Cool. Well, I am Adam Coble. This is my channel. Thank you for being in it. You can follow me on Twitter at SkinnyGhost. I am also a GM. I GM 3, starting tomorrow, 4 live shows that I always host right here on various places on the internet. I'm also a game designer, and that is what makes me an inveterate hacking degenerate, because I can't play a game that doesn't quite fit with what I'm trying to do for very long before I start taking it apart. Mark my words, we're approaching the day in which I need to make a Mirror Shades dating sim game that we can play instead of Shadowrun, because...
Nice.
Goddamn. So, yeah, stick around this channel for more content like this. Give me a follow, twitch.tv/Adam Coble if you're watching this on YouTube. There will be more of the Hack Attack and shows like it in this vicinity. So, thanks for coming today. Hope to see you again. Thanks for coming, Stephen.
Thanks,
Had a good
Adam.
time as always. And we will see all of you beautiful people next time. Have a good one.
Bye.